Welcome aboard, Board and Commission members for the City of Northfield. I'm Ben Mardig, the City Administrator for the City of Northfield. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer of the city, serving at the pleasure of the Mayor and the City Council. And I'm working with my staff on a day-to-day basis to provide the administrative support for the city. You've all been appointed by the Mayor and confirmed by the City Council and serve in an advisory role for the city. Certainly your role is very important, as our City Council really has a full workload and really rely on our boards and commissions to provide additional analysis and advice to them as we deal with the city policy and issues that we might be dealing with as a community to make this a great place to live. We have 16 boards and commissions that are and special advisory groups of the city with about 161 members. So there's a lot of you doing a lot of good work for our community. You are very important leaders to our organization that review our policy and give that additional in-depth review. All of you are unique in many ways, and our staff will be providing more information to you as it relates to unique rules of business that you might have, including bylaws, maybe certain statutory powers that are unique to you. So there are certainly unique differences from one board or commission to the next. You are assigned a staff person, so they're there to provide a resource and to support you in your needs as a board and commission. So I encourage working as really a team, working together with them to work through the business that you're dealing with. One of the things to think about as you are in your new role is it's important to understand your new role in supporting the city. Consider the factors that influence the ability to make consistent, reasoned decisions that support the city's strategic vision. I encourage you to learn how to build relationships to successfully lead and achieve personal and community goals. Keys to success to take into consideration also include understanding the roles that the other people play at the table, understanding the work that is expected of you and expected of others, and possess honesty, sensitivity to, and tolerance of differing views, a friendly, responsive, and patient approach, and personal integrity. In the end, have fun and encourage humor on your boards and commissions. With that, we do have for you an orientation packet material that's included in your background materials. So there's a lot of detail in that. I want to do a few points of emphasis within those documents to draw your attention to today. In that orientation packet, it includes information related to open meeting laws. So in the state of Minnesota, there are information that apply to the open meeting law, and it's an important issue as a board and commission. Your board and commission meetings are ultimately open to the public. Staff helps to ensure that we're meeting laws related to publication, including things like having to put the agenda out 3 days in advance, to notice of the meeting, whenever the board's going to be discussing or dealing with issues. One of the things to keep in mind is that meetings can occur outside of your regular posted meetings. Serial communications of meetings outside of meetings are not allowed under state law. So one of the things to think about is if you're dealing with business, it's really meant to be dealt with in the board meetings, not outside of it. So it can be interpreted that there's a meeting outside, and if you haven't done appropriate noticing of the public, then the violation could occur. So as an example, if you're dealing with a policy issue in a board meeting between your next meeting, you cannot legally go out and work with the majority of the other members meeting maybe in one coffee shop at different times to try and build consensus and agreement on a policy issue. That'd be prohibited under the law. Any formal actions that come out of a board and commission must be taken place in those open meeting laws that are posted. So there can't be any formal action taken outside of a board meeting itself. Electronic communications can also be considered as part of serial communication that could be considered an open meeting. So please be cautious of utilizing email correspondence back and forth as well, because you could, whether intentionally or unintentionally, be violating open meeting law. One of the things to think about as you're maybe dealing with communications of board members where there's distribution of maybe board packet materials is if, for example, you want to do a one-way direction of communication. You can do that by saying, I can't make it to a meeting. You might want the members to know that. You can use the blind carbon copy function of your email and to include people in that, so that it's not easy for people to do a reply all that could end up ultimately leading to some violation, particularly if you're dealing with some policy related issues. So again, really try and keep the business within the meetings themselves and avoid that. Ultimately, violations can lead to fines and up to including removal of office in your role as well. And there can be pretty significant fees, including attorney fees, that apply, so please take that in mind. Another thing that is, information that you deal with is often public information under the State of Minnesota Government Data Practices Act. It applies to all data collected, created, received, maintained, or disseminated by the city, including all of its officers, employees, and appointees. So you are not required to retain the data unless it's necessary to fulfill your official duties or activities. So personal related email correspondence is not an issue, but ultimately if it relates to formal board materials, you are responsible for keeping that information. We do have other information, including things like state conflict of interest laws to keep in mind. So if you have a personal or financial interest or related to an issue that you might be dealing with on your board or commission, to keep that in mind, that you not only need to abstain from voting, but you also need to abstain from voting at the board meetings or trying to influence policy outside of the meetings related to that issue. Many of our boards and commissions are just advisory, but some actually do have decision-making authority, and it so applies really more to those boards and commissions that have actual formal policy authority to make decisions. So entities like the Economic Development Authority, Housing Redevelopment Authority, and maybe others actually have decision-making power. Pay particular attention in those cases to board members related to your conflict of interest that might apply. You might also be dealing with policy issues that might be a little more gray outside of a financial issue that you might have an interest in. Maybe you serve on another nonprofit board, or maybe you have ownership interest in a private business that might be implicated by some policy. There could be potential conflict of interest in those cases, so really try to caution you to seek out staff to identify where those areas might be occurring, or you might have concerns or questions related to that. Ultimately, if the staff can't answer the question, we do have a city attorney that can help provide advice, as well as the League of Minnesota Cities, who assists in providing some information related to that. Also included in your orientation materials include the City Council adopted rules of order and rules of decorum for meetings. It does apply to all of our boards and commissions unless you have specific rules of business that in order that would be outside of that. So most of you would be following these guidelines, so we've attached that information for you. It includes things like how to follow Robert's Rules of Order to make motions, procedures for considering action, debating related issues. So although many of you probably function in a somewhat informal capacity, it is important to, as an effective board and commission, to follow Robert's rules, to respect that process, and to work through that. For those of you that are continuing members from the past, you might have participated in a training event last fall that we provided to the board and commission members related to a parliamentarian that we had come in. Certainly you can reference the materials from that date. Otherwise, the orientation packet have kind of the basic tools for you to take a look at about how to follow those. As it relates to rules of decorum section, it's a little over a page of background materials, but it's really saying what is our values of behavior at our boards and commissions. Ultimately, it's encouraging real positive interactions at our board and commission members, and you all own the responsibility to ensure that that's happening within our boards and commissions. So please consider being courteous and respectful with your fellow members, staff, and others that might be present as guests at your meeting. This includes both verbal language that you use as well as body language, because certainly body language can send messages as well. So pay attention, be attentive, be respectful of your members, encourage open dialogue in the democratic process. So try and avoid things like dominating the discussion or discouraging people from participating. It's not just the chair's role to enforce these rules, but really all of you have a responsibility. Following up from the training of the event as well, just a few notes of advice for those serving in the officer role as chairperson of your board and commission. You're certainly an important position in the role, working closely with staff as it relates to the development of the agenda that would go out. But ultimately, you're there to be a facilitator of discussion at the meeting. Note that that's very significantly different than being a leader of the discussion or dominating the discussion. That's really not your role as the chairperson. Keep people on task, run an efficient and professional meeting, so follow the agenda, start and end on time, be respectful to people's time. Please don't allow members to speak out of turn, question the motives or character of other members, or drift off topic on items that might not relate to your board and commission members. Certainly you have a full slate of things to accomplish as a board and commission, and to really focus on those areas. For all board members, please consider probably some common sense issues, but attend all meetings that you have for your boards and commissions. Arrive on time and stay till the end of the meetings. Be prepared and do your homework, and ultimately participate and follow the rules that we have provided to you with your orientation materials. With that, I did want to talk a little bit about the broader vision of the community and kind of how you fit into the broader organization. The City Council was involved from March to August of 2017, along with senior management, staff, key collaborators, and the community at large in a strategic planning process that ultimately ended in a strategic planning adopted document covering the years 2018 to 2020. The plan consists of 6 priority areas, the issues of greatest importance to the city over the next 3 years. Associated with each of these priorities is a set of desired outcomes, key outcome indicators, and performance targets describing expected results and how the results will be measured. The plans also include strategic initiatives that will be undertaken to achieve the targeted outcome. So we are now in 2018 into our implementation phase. Staff's working on development of the action plan related to that and continuing to do that. We're expecting our first report coming up to the City Council in the near future. I would imagine all of you are touched in some way as a board and commission, some more directly than others. So I encourage you to have the discussions with staff as to how those relate. The vision statement that came out of that provides an aspirational vision of where we want to go for a community that was adopted by the City Council reads, Northfield is an open, safe, and welcoming community recognized for its world-class colleges and historic riverfront downtown, and is dedicated to sustainably enhancing and preserving its vibrant culture, celebrated arts, strong economy, and an excellent quality of life where all can thrive. Certainly a very aspirational statement and one that we'll be working on as an organization to attain. The mission statement, which is more of the operational action goal of the city, reads, the City of Northfield works for the common good of our residents and businesses and the improvement of our community by providing excellent, innovative municipal services that carry out the city's vision for a high quality of life for all. So we'll be working with you on implementing that mission under our strategic priority areas, including economic development, a community that's economically thriving, affordable housing, a community where everyone can afford to live, infrastructure, a community where infrastructure supports its objectives, diversity, equity, and inclusion, a community that welcomes everyone, operational effectiveness, a community with a government that works, and last, climate change impacts, a community that's resilient and sustainable. So I look forward to working with you along with our staff on meeting those strategic initiatives. Your staff also will be able to reference where the guiding documents of the city, including the comprehensive plan and other related issues, as well as your board and commission page, can be found. They also should be working with you on helping you to navigate through where you get your board application and materials. In conclusion, I did want to note that we are going to be having a board and commission recognition event on the evening of April 25th. So I encourage you to mark your calendars for that event. That'll be the second year that we'll be doing that in a row, and look forward for your participation, as well as doing another training in this upcoming fall. With that, on behalf of the mayor and the city council, I'd like to thank you for your service and have a great meeting.